I was recently given an assignment to draw 2 masks depicting 2 different versions of myself, one being the personality I show to others and the second being who I am behind closed doors. Honestly, at first, this was a difficult concept for me to grasp, considering that I've always adopted my outer mask as my inner and avoided acknowledging the truth of my own identity. I decided to start with a blank white base to not only allow myself full control over the colors that I use, but also because I know that I as a person can be versatile, outwardly or otherwise. For my first mask, I started with layering various shades of pink, adding depth as I went on. I chose pink because I like to appear as someone who is hopeful and full of love, a person who can be home for many that welcomes with a warm embrace. I then started layering shades of yellow around my eyes because I always project myself as someone who only sees the positive in a situation. No matter how dark or grim, I always see the light at the end of the tunnel. I try to push this idea of almost infectious positivity, leaving it as one of my key personality traits that I show to others, even when I don't necessarily believe it myself. I decided to avoid using any defined shapes or lines because I like to present myself as someone who is easily adaptable, someone who flows from one situation into the next and always bounces back through hardships. I then used the same yellows to contour my nose. I did this because I tried to allow my quote-unquote positivity to define and shape my decisions and actions. I tried to ensure that just about everything for the base was symmetrical, to represent how I tried to appear as someone who is organized and collected, someone who is level-headed and able to complete any task at hand and function cleanly through new and unfamiliar situations. I then began to layer on various shades of blue, not because I necessarily appear sad or upset, but because I tried to be perceived as someone who is calm and at peace, someone who is stable and honest. My goal may not be to be seen as sad, but rather seen as someone who is able to be vulnerable. The dots I placed on my face are meant to represent how, although I like to be seen as someone organized and collected, I also like to be observed as a wild card, unpredictable and fun. I did, however, fade them out and blend them in with smaller and less noticeable dots, almost resembling freckles. I did this because I still like to push this false, clean persona. I also placed faded colors on my lips that do change throughout the look. However, the main reason of the initial dissolve was to show how I push this feeling that I'm always sure my words are of value and should be heard, even though I myself don't always necessarily believe this. The red violet around my eyes and seen on various spots of my face is meant to illustrate how I outwardly express my creativity, seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses and everything as a means to create and express. I also like to push my passions and express my feelings in great detail. This is something I hold very deeply and dear to myself beneath the mask as well, making it one of the things that both sides of me have in common. One of the deepest things about me that I hold true to myself and will always express no matter what is my creativity. I was not expecting to feel so connected with this look, seeing as it's meant to display a false reality. However, even though it may not be the full truth of who I am, it's still me in a sense. It may not be who I am entirely, but without the influence of my real personality, this one would never exist. I decided to include video of the removal because it symbolized how I will need to remove my mask in order to fully open up and show who I truly am as the video goes on. With this look, I decided to include a blacked out neck to represent how I often feel choked down by my own insecurities and negative thoughts, how they often control my life and block me from achieving my goals. With this eye, I decided to do what is called a halo eye. I chose this specific technique and design because I feel it shows how, even though in all reality I'm often blinded by my own negativity and I perceive the world as dark and grim, I do still make an attempt to see the positive, even if it does, more often than not, get drowned out by my own brain. On the other eye, however, I chose a sharper and more intense shape. I did this because I happen to be very logical in situations. While I try to present as someone who often goes with the flow, I'm more analytical in my decision-making. I also feel that it's important to point out the asymmetry of this look. I did this on purpose in comparison to the other where everything was just about perfect. Because I'm not. I have difficulty grasping the concept of perfection, and I felt asymmetry was the perfect way to represent how truly unorganized I am. I used shades of gray to put my insecurity into perspective, as well as various shades of orange. Like I said before, I'm often very drowned out by my own negativity and find it difficult to see the positive in situations, even if I do present myself as someone who always sees the positive in a situation. but I do also feel it's important to include the fact that I am still me in both ways. The childlike wonder is still prevalent in my mind, no matter how dark and dreary it may get at times. This look is meant to be messy and unclean, while still using a similar color palette to my previous one, putting into perspective both the similarities and differences of my masks. I also made to include the same purple-red shade as before, despite using it on a different background, like is seen on my lips with a black background rather than white. I feel this shows how my creativity bleeds out from within, like an opened wound, not quite ready to be sewn shut. I once referred to myself as a collage of blood and muddied colors, and I feel this look truly puts those words into the view for others to understand and see through the same light as my eyes, truly giving them the ability to comprehend who it is that I am behind closed doors.